On a forgotten corner of an Air Force base, an old man in grease-stained coveralls tightened bolts on a silent jet. The young airman called him Grandpa Gearhead, snapping photos of his rusted toolbox, laughing behind his back. But when a prototype failed mid-runway and no one could fix it, that same quiet mechanic stepped forward and did the impossible by hand. 2 days later, a black SUV arrived. A 4-star general stepped out, walked into the hangar, and saluted the man they had mocked. What the base didn't know was that the old wrench guy once saved an entire fleet, and what happened next would silence every voice and change the way they saw him. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? The sun beat down on the tarmac as 3 young airmen strolled past the open hangar, their boots loud on the concrete, their laughter louder. One of them jabbed a thumb toward the man crouched beneath the jet, a silver-haired mechanic in grease-stained coveralls, tightening bolts with hands that moved slowly but surely.
"That your grandpa?"
The youngest smirked. "Looks like his toolbox flew in Vietnam," another chuckled. "Probably thinks carburetors still matter." The old man didn't look up. He just kept working, the lines on his face deep with sun and silence. A faint breeze lifted the flap of his collar, revealing a badge half hidden, its edges worn with age, its insignia unfamiliar to the boys who never asked. To them, he was background, invisible, outdated, replaceable. But in that quiet moment beneath the engine's shadow, something steadier than steel held the old man's world together. He didn't need to answer. Ernie Dawson arrived before the sun most mornings, his old pickup rattling into the corner of the lot, where no one else parked. He walked with a slight limp, not enough to slow him down, but enough to be noticed, though few ever asked why. His coveralls were always clean, though the elbows had been patched so many times they looked quilted. He didn't speak much in the break room, preferring the back bench behind Hangar 3, where the engines weren't loud, and the pigeons landed quietly on the runway lights. At 68, he moved like a man who knew where every tool belonged and how to fix things that shouldn't work anymore. No one asked what he did before this. No one knew he'd spent 3 decades keeping jets airborne in places that didn't officially exist. They didn't know about the stealth program, or the night missions, or the whispered commendations. They didn't know about the silver star in his sock drawer, or the folded flag in the hallway closet, or the photo, creased and fading, of a younger Ernie beside a 4-star general who once called him brother. To the young airman, he was just Grandpa Gearhead, the old guy who always knew what wire to check or what line needed pressure. They joked, they laughed, but Ernie never corrected them. He wasn't here to impress. He was here to serve, same as always. But some nights when the hangar lights dimmed and the jet settled into silence, he sat alone on the bench, hands folded, eyes on the empty sky. And in that long quiet before the stars came out, a small part of him wondered if any of. The hangar was already buzzing when Lieutenant Cole stormed in, his flight suit half-zipped and frustration riding high on his voice. His jet, an F-22 scheduled for a demo flight, had failed startup twice. Diagnostics returned nothing but error codes. 3 crewmen hovered near the nose cone, shrugging. "We've reset it twice, sir." "Still dead," Cole scowled. "Get tech to send someone who knows what they're doing." Minutes later, Ernie appeared, toolbox clanking softly as he rolled it to the aircraft. Cole turned, saw him, and muttered, "They sent the antique." One of his buddies smirked. "Watch the fossil whisper it back to life." Another leaned in, snapping a photo of Ernie's rusted case. "This thing belonged to Orville Wright?" he joked, loud enough for nearby techs to hear. Even the sergeant chuckled. Ernie said nothing. He opened his kit, revealing neatly arranged tools older than some of the crew themselves. As the young men lingered nearby, whispering and laughing, Ernie worked, careful, methodical, silent. He traced wires others overlooked, adjusted a throttle sensor by feel, and tightened one last bolt with deliberate precision. He wiped his hands on a rag, closed the box, and walked off without a word. 10 minutes later, the F-22's engine roared to life like it had never faltered. The airmen stared, impressed but unwilling to admit it. Cole just grunted. Guess even broken clocks are right sometimes. No one said thank you. That evening, Ernie sat at the far end of the mess hall, eating alone as usual. From a few tables down, he heard them again. Same voices, same tone. Bet he thinks a monkey wrench fixed the whole bird, one laughed. They should just retire him already, another said. Give him a fake medal and a rocking chair. Ernie looked down at his tray, hands still bearing the black traces of grease, and took another bite without blinking. The laughter stung more than usual that night. Not because it was new, but because it had stopped being surprising. The sirens wailed just after noon, cutting through the chatter of lunch and slamming tension across the base. A drill, or so they thought, until a prototype jet locked up mid-taxi with a cascade of system faults. Tech crews swarmed, eyes darting between blinking error screens and pilot reports, their confidence unraveling by the minute. The lead engineer barked into a headset. Diagnostics won't hold. We're grounded. Nobody knew what to do. Then, without being called, Ernie appeared at the edge of the commotion, sleeves rolled, expression calm. He didn't speak. He just stepped closer and pointed. Pull the backup controller. It's overcompensating. The rookie assigned to the bird blinked. Sir, Ernie was already moving. He crouched beneath the fuselage, reached for a calibration panel, and rewired a junction box by hand, bypassing the faulty loop entirely. The rookie watched in silence, then asked softly, "Where'd you learn that?" Ernie looked up, his eyes unreadable. "Same place I learned to breathe, on a flight line." As the engine hummed back to life and stabilized for the first time all day, the young man noticed something. Clipped inside the lid of Ernie's toolbox, tucked beneath a coil of wire, was a silver badge with a symbol he didn't recognize. Later that evening, curiosity got the better of him. A quiet corner, a search bar, a digital archive deep inside the Air Force database. He found it. A 1999 maintenance hero citation for a Master Sergeant Ernest Dawson, credited with saving a stealth aircraft mid-flight, using manual override and field calibration under hostile pressure. The rookie stared at the grainy photo. It was him. Ernie, same eyes, same quiet. The file had been marked historical asset, limited distribution. He shared it with one friend, then another. By morning, the hangar wasn't quite so loud anymore. The laughter didn't return, but the looks did, longer, more thoughtful. The jokes were gone. The whispers had changed. The black SUV rolled past the checkpoint without slowing, escorted by a pair of base MPs who didn't dare ask questions. Every step it took toward Hangar 4 drew curious glances, but no one moved to interfere. Inside, the usual hum of maintenance echoed off the walls. Airmen laughing softly, tools clanking, engines humming low under inspection. Ernie was beneath the intake of a bird with a fuel pressure issue, his hands black with oil, half of his shirt damp with sweat. No one noticed the approaching footsteps until they stopped just beyond his feet. A voice calm and familiar spoke one word, "Chief?" Ernie slid out from under the jet, squinting up at the silhouette in full dress blues. He blinked once. "General Albright?" The four-star didn't answer with words. He raised his hand and delivered a full, deliberate salute. The hangar froze. One wrench clattered to the floor. An airman choked on a breath. Another whispered, stunned, That's the guy from command." Ernie stood slowly, wiping his hands on an old rag, still not fully understanding. "Sir, The general shook his head. "You don't speak right now, Chief." "I do." From his pocket, he pulled a small, weathered patch. Its threads faded, its edges frayed. He pinned it to Ernie's chest with quiet ceremony. This patch was given only 5 times, for actions that never made headlines but saved fleets. He earned it keeping planes in the sky when the rest of us were just hoping to land alive. Reporters appeared at the edge of the hangar, summoned quietly by someone higher up. A camera clicked as Ernie stood still, unsure of what to do with his hands, while the general turned to the gathered crews. "You've seen airmen fly, but you've never seen what holds them in the air. This man did that for decades, quietly, perfectly." One by one, the airmen who had once laughed began to stand straighter. A few stepped forward, hands at their sides, unsure whether to salute or shake his hand. Ernie didn't smile, but his eyes shone. For the first time in years, someone had spoken his name, and the world finally listened. The sun had barely cleared the horizon when Ernie took his seat on the weathered bench behind Hangar 4, the same one he'd claimed for years. The hangar still smelled of jet fuel and dust, but today something in the air felt different. Lighter, though he wouldn't say that out loud. He sipped from a battered thermos, eyes on the empty runway when footsteps approached. Lieutenant Cole stood there awkwardly, holding a steaming paper cup in each hand. "Didn't know how you take it," he muttered. Ernie glanced at him, then reached for the cup. "Hot works." They sat in silence for a while, the only sound the distant whine of a startup test. Cole stared at the ground. "I was wrong," he said finally, almost under his breath. Ernie didn't blink. "You weren't the first. Won't be the last." He took a slow sip. "Just take care of the jet next time." Cole nodded. It wasn't forgiveness exactly. It was something better. Earned, understood. The next few days brought quiet changes. Airmen who'd barely looked Ernie's way now lingered longer in the bays. They asked questions, real ones, about diagnostics, about pressure gauges, about things not found in manuals. And Ernie answered, not with lectures, but with calm, lived wisdom. His bench wasn't always empty at lunch anymore. Sometimes 2 or 3 sat with him, eating in silence, letting presence speak louder than words. But he never changed his routine, still parked in the same far corner, still cleaned his tools by hand every evening, as if nothing had shifted. When one of the newer recruits finally worked up the courage to ask, "Why didn't you tell anyone who you were?" Ernie just shrugged. "Some things don't need announcing," he said, tightening the lid on his toolbox. "They just need remembering."